intend to convict Ms. Ortiz of all the charges which have been leveled at this point beyond a reason.
Who opened fire on Rihanna's home while her family was inside? And why? And what if this wasn't some random act, but something far more disturbing? Some believe it may have been obsession. Others think it could have been an attempt to intimidate her, or to grab attention through the name of one of the biggest stars in the world. But the more details emerge, the darker the central question becomes. Why was Rihanna's home the target? On March 8, 2026, that question stopped being just another shocking headline and turned into a real story of gunfire, panic, and danger outside one of the most protected homes in Beverly Hills. Today, we're breaking down what happened that day, who is accused of carrying out the attack, and what may have been behind it. According to investigators, the shooting happened in broad daylight outside Rihanna's Beverly Hills home. At the time, Rihanna, A$AP Rocky, their children, and other family members were all on the property. No one was injured, but the fact that gunfire erupted outside a home where a family was inside immediately sent shockwaves far beyond celebrity news. The suspect was taken into custody shortly after the incident. Later, she was hit with serious charges, including attempted murder. And that is the moment this case became something much bigger. Because it was no longer just a shooting outside a celebrity home, it started looking like a possible targeted attack. Right now, one question matters most. Why was Rihanna's home chosen in the first place? There are three main theories, and once you hear all the facts, it becomes a lot easier to understand which one feels the most likely. The first is obsession, and there are details that make that theory hard to ignore. According to People, the suspect had social media posts connected to Rihanna, including language that many people found strange, intense, and deeply personal. The fact that Rihanna's name was already appearing in her public posts before the shooting has made the obsession theory one of the most widely discussed. In cases like this, fixation on a celebrity is often the point where interest crosses the line and becomes something much more dangerous. And there's another detail that makes this theory even more unsettling. This is not the first time Rihanna's home has become the focus of threatening attention. The Associated Press has noted that back in 2018, a man broke into her Hollywood Hills home and remained there for nearly 12 hours before he was discovered. That case was shocking for the same reason. It was not just a random trespasser, but someone who had crossed directly into the private world of a global star. It does not prove any link to this current attack, but it does highlight something important. Celebrity homes, especially those of stars as famous as Rihanna, have long been magnets for people with obsessive fixations. And this is far from an isolated pattern. American celebrity history is full of cases where fixation on a star went far beyond normal fan behavior. That is why the obsession angle feels especially believable to so many people here. When someone begins publicly mentioning a celebrity, speaks as if there is some hidden personal connection, and then shows up outside that person's home with a weapon, it starts to look less like an emotional breakdown and more like a dangerous escalation of personal fixation. And the more details like that begin to surface, the harder it becomes to see this as some random outburst. The second theory is that this may have been designed to become as high profile as possible by targeting one of the biggest names in the world. And there are details that make people take that possibility seriously. According to the Associated Press and People, investigators believe the attack was planned in advance, and prosecutors have said Rihanna herself was the intended target. On top of that, the suspect traveled from Florida to Los Angeles, which makes this look far less like a spontaneous breakdown and far more like something that may have been building for some time. When someone crosses the country, shows up outside the home of one of the most recognizable women on the planet, and then, according to prosecutors, opens fire on that property, it raises an obvious question. Was Rihanna's name not just part of the backdrop, but the very point of the attack? There is another detail that makes this theory even darker. The shooting did not happen at night, in isolation, or under circumstances where it could easily go unnoticed. According to the Associated Press, police received the call at around 1:15 in the afternoon, and people reported that the 911 caller described hearing about 10 shots near the upper gate of the property. Local TV footage later appeared to show bullet holes in the gate, while people also reported damage to walls and to a trailer on the property. All of that gives the impression of an act that was not only dangerous, but almost guaranteed to become public. In a case like this, the scene itself creates maximum impact. That is where this theory starts to hit harder. Rihanna's home is not just a private residence, it is a symbol of status, fame, and enormous media attention. Any incident tied to a name like hers instantly moves beyond a local police report. If the same shooting had happened outside an ordinary house, it likely would have remained a neighborhood story. But gunfire outside Rihanna's home becomes national news in seconds, picked up by the biggest media outlets in the country. In that sense, the target alone creates massive shock value, long before investigators ever reveal a motive. The picture becomes even more striking with what happened next. According to People, the suspect was arrested about half an hour later near the Sherman Oaks Galleria, roughly 8 miles from the scene, and authorities found a weapon and shell casings in the vehicle. This does not look like an argument that suddenly exploded at the gate. It looks more like an incident involving travel, a weapon, an escape route, and, according to the prosecution, a deliberately chosen target. And when you add prosecutors' language describing the attack as willful, deliberate, and premeditated, the theory that this may have been an attempt to create a headline-grabbing crime through the name of a global superstar stops sounding like pure speculation. It becomes one of the most talked-about possibilities in the entire case. And there is one more detail that makes this theory especially gripping. According to the Associated Press, the charges do not involve only Rihanna's home, but also a trailer on the property and a neighboring house. In other words, prosecutors are not describing a symbolic shot fired toward a celebrity. They are describing actions that allegedly created real danger for multiple inhabited properties. So, if the goal really was maximum impact, that impact may not have come only from Rihanna's name, but from the sheer scale of the risk. That is what makes this second theory so disturbing. This may not have been just an attack on a specific home, but an attempt to turn one of the most famous names in the world into the center of a crime no one could ignore. Then there is the third theory, and to many people it is the most unsettling of all. The motive may have existed only in the suspect's own mind. What makes this theory so chilling is one simple fact. As of now, investigators have not identified any clear relationship between the suspect and Rihanna, or any obvious outside conflict that would explain why Rihanna's home became the target. There is no known public feud, business dispute, or personal falling out that would neatly explain the gunfire. The Associated Press has reported that authorities have found no confirmed connection between the suspect and Rihanna, and that the motive remains under investigation. And that is exactly what makes the story feel even darker. When there is no visible reason on the outside, it starts to feel as if the real reason may have existed entirely inside one person's perception. This theory is made even more disturbing by the suspect's own posts. People reported that Rihanna's name appeared in strange messages long before the shooting, and that the wording sounded as if some hidden, personal connection existed between them. One post from February 23rd read almost like a direct message to Rihanna. And that is where the story becomes especially eerie. when there is no confirmed contact in real life, but in one person's mind, there may already be an entire internal narrative. In cases like this, danger often begins there, not with an open conflict, but with an imagined bond that slowly starts to feel real, and then the story gets even darker. According to People, this was not just a matter of odd posts or emotional online behavior. After those messages, prosecutors say the suspect ended up outside Rihanna's home with a weapon, and then opened fire on the property while Rihanna, A$AP Rocky, their 3 children, Rihanna's mother, and staff members were inside. When that kind of sequence forms, strange online fixation followed by a real armed attack, the idea of an internal, irrational motive stops sounding weak. If anything, it begins to look like one of the most frightening explanations on the table. That is why this third theory hits so hard. If there had been some clear conflict behind the shooting, the public could at least explain the event to itself. But here, there is no simple logic to hold on to. No old revenge story everyone already knew about. No public dispute building toward an explosion. There is only a person whose actions, according to prosecutors, appeared to be planned. And yet there is still no clear answer as to why Rihanna was chosen. And when violence comes not from a recognizable motive, but from a private logic closed off from everyone else, that is what makes it truly terrifying. That picture becomes even more intense when you step back and look at the larger pattern. Attacks on celebrities are not rare, and they are not isolated exceptions. Behind the glamour of fame, there is often another reality: obsessive attention, stalking, trespassing, and people who stop seeing a celebrity as a public figure and start seeing them as a personal target. That is part of why the Rihanna story has hit such a nerve in America. Cases like this have already shown how quickly attention can cross a dangerous line. In 2014, a man broke into Sandra Bullock's home while she was inside. Taylor Swift has dealt with repeated stalking cases involving people showing up at her homes. Selena Gomez and Jennifer Lopez have also faced dangerous stalking incidents and trespassers. And in one of the darkest examples of all, Christina Grimmie was shot and killed by an obsessed fan after a concert in 2016. And that is what makes the Rihanna case so unsettling. In many of these stories, it did not begin with violence. It began with attention, then fixation, then the sense of an imagined connection, and then suddenly, the person was no longer in the comment section or on social media. They were outside the home, outside the venue, outside the gate. That is why theories involving obsession, the desire to stage a high-profile crime, or a motive that existed only in the suspect's own mind, feel so disturbing here. Because these are not abstract possibilities. There are already real and very dark precedents for all of them. At this point, the Rihanna case already has a suspect, a weapon, serious charges, and prosecutors arguing that the attack was planned. But taken more broadly, this is no longer just a story about one celebrity. It is another reminder that fame does not only attract admiration, it can also attract people whose interest slowly turns into obsession, and whose obsession turns into a real threat. And that may be why this story is landing so hard. Because too many people have seen how stories like this can end.